Yo, what's going on? It's your main man, Rick the Dawn. Hey, yo, I just caught up. I'm sorry for being a little late for anybody that was waiting. I know nobody was waiting, whatever. This episode is brought to you by rickthedawn.com. Check it out if you like music and stuff like that, or if you like me, whatever. You don't like me. But anyway, I just wanted to quickly, before I talk about the title of the video, which is about Frannie and Danny, just before I go into that, I have to do this because I know if you click this button or click my video, you obviously like Survivor, and I think that you have to check this out. Have you seen Netflix Outlast? It's a show called Outlast on Netflix. And a big question I keep asking myself is Outlast everything that Survivor wants to be or used to be or dreams of being? Because let me tell you, I clicked on Outlast. It's like, let me just watch 5 seconds of it. And when I say that I was not able to turn it off, it's like I said immediately in my mind, I have to make sure I mention this the next time I do another recap and reaction for the show Survivor. I tell all the Survivor fans out there, Outlast is everything, man. It's like it's real Survivor. You know how this season of Survivor, or I would say modern Survivor, kind of feels like the players are being pampered off camera. I can't shake that feeling. It just feels too rich, and it's too much. The cameras are too crisp. The cast members' skin is too healthy. I don't really see any dirt, but Outlast is a different experience. And I'm not promoting the show or anything like that, though I am. I'm just trying to make sure I tell you and give you a heads up on it because it's really a great show, and especially if you like Survivor. All right, check out Outlast, and if you do, in the comment section, let me know how you felt about it. All right, so will Danny regret using the idol last week on Frannie? Sound off in the comment section on how you feel. I know this is a very controversial question because there are a lot of Frannie believers. There's a lot of Danny believers, people who really invested in both of these two individuals. So I thought this would be a great question to pose because I'm still trying to figure it out myself. Okay. Now, if you don't know, last week for episode 8, Danny decided to pretty much play his idol in favor of Frannie because Frannie was on the chopping block. And without question, if Danny does not play his idol, Frannie goes home because she had the majority of the votes. But because Danny plays the idol, this ultimately ends in Brandon going home, which I thought was a very clever move on Danny's part. We heard in this episode several times that very move placed a lot of eyeballs on Danny. Now, the question remains, did he make a mistake? And I asked that question because in this episode, we see Frannie and Danny face off in the immunity challenge. And let me tell you, I've been saying this for weeks. Now, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but I've been saying this for weeks. I said Frannie is a force. I said that. And all you have to do is watch my recaps, and you'll hear me say it several times. Frannie is athletic as F. Okay, she is extremely athletic. She is a force of nature. Forget what you see on the exterior. Forget what you think she is in terms of her gender and all this other stuff and these different biases. She is a force of nature, man. Not only is she incredibly athletic. Do you see Danny? He is a UFC or a mixed martial artist, and he is rippled with muscles. And Frannie has decimated this guy. Now, Lauren did it last week, and no one wanted to give Lauren credit. And I'm going to be the first one to push back against that. Screw the fact that her feet are small. Lauren beat Danny. Give her credit. If you don't like Lauren, I don't know why. She is annoying. Okay, I do know why. But the point is, she beat Danny. And those same people better say this exact same thing about Frannie's feet, despite them being 3 times bigger than Lauren's. Listen, let me tell you something. Danny has lost twice. Once to Lauren, once to Frannie in the finals. But we'll stay focused here. We saw it. And the entire time, I'm thinking to myself, Frannie's going to beat this guy. Because Frannie is a force of nature. I've seen her leap like an entire bridge in one leap. Okay, I've seen that. There was a net in front of her, and she completely ignored the net and went upwards, and she floated like Michael Jordan. And when I saw that, I said, oh, okay. This is not your sister's Dungeon and Dragon playmate. This is a freaking nature. So anyway, I'm off task. So yeah, I will say without certain, we don't know what happens from here. One side of the spectrum says Danny played the idol in favor of Frannie to lower Ratu's membership. Because he played that idol, they were able to get rid of Brandon, which levels the playing field. If Danny doesn't play the idol, then Brandon remains on Ratu and they stay in the majority. And quite frankly, Danny may go home this episode 9. So on that frontier, I believe that you have a great argument, Mr. and Mrs. I think that you okay. All right, I get that. However, if Danny doesn't use the idol, Frannie goes home last week, episode 8, and this week he wins immunity. So therefore, he would not have gone home. So that's my rebuttal. Okay. I'm going to just put it out there. When Danny played the idol for Frannie, I had no idea where this was coming from because Danny is a player who I would term to be a real survivor. Okay, real. He's someone who's really playing the game of Survivor. You can tell he's a fan of the former game of Survivor. He's not a big fan of this new pampered Carson version of Survivor, where you're throwing up and you want to eat rice and you forget the reason you're here on the show. I get that and I see that, and I raise your 10, Danny, because I think it goes against the very fabric of the person that you appear to be representing, which is someone who's a ultimate survivor. I think saving Frannie was the ultimate mistake. Now, I know I may be in the minority, or most people may not agree, but let me say, I'll say it, and I'll say it again. I would say it was a mistake for this very reason. She's a competitor. Okay. If it was another player of lesser caliber, I would say, okay, fine, whatever. You can definitely beat this person. But I would argue that you never save the person or group of people that can beat you, because that makes no sense logically. So this is why I think he made a critical error. Okay, Frannie goes home, and now the board is open, and arguably one of the stronger players in the game is Danny. I think right now I can't say with complete certainty that Danny is the strongest player in the game right now. You want to know why? Because there's a freaking She-Hulk on the other side of the spectrum named Frannie. She is a problem. Frannie is better than Danny in two categories that I think are worth mentioning. Number one, she's more athletic than Danny. And I can't believe I'm saying that because, like I said, Danny is rippled in muscles. Secondly, she's more liked than Danny. Okay. She's more liked than Danny, so much so that Danny played his own idol and gave up his own safety, and he's the ultimate survivor. That makes no sense when I say it. The ultimate survivor gave up survival, or a piece of his survival. It makes no sense. She's more likable than Danny, and she is more charming than Danny. She has, I would argue, more sympathy than Danny, I think. And I will ask you this question without any issue. If Danny and Frannie were at the finals, and it's three people, let's throw Yam Yam in there. Are you giving the money to Danny or Frannie? Now, I know what you're saying. You're saying I'm going to give it to Danny because he saved Frannie and still made it to the end. He deserves to win. But how many times have you seen this game go to the player who is not as deserving? We've seen it several times, right? So for me, though, I'm going to go Frannie. Because she's more charming. She's funner to watch. No, I won't say funner. I actually enjoy watching Danny play the game. But I will say she's more charming. She's done just as much, if not more, than Danny. And she is a little less abrasive. Like, Danny has rubbed people wrong. Going through Jamie's bag is definitely going to surface during the final tribal council, and that's going to rub a lot of jury members wrong. Trust me on that, and mark my words. That move will probably cost him $1 million ultimately. Frannie, though, she has Matt on the jury already. She has Brandon on the jury already. Think about that. Are you starting to get my drift here? Brandon knows that Danny played a part in his departure, and we know that because when Danny walks past Brandon during tribal council, Brandon gives him that old look like, oh, okay. Let me tell you, Danny probably has already destroyed his chances of winning this game. And not to mention, there's players within the game, like Kane, like Carolyn, who don't like him. So if Carolyn goes to the jury, Danny has no shot of winning. I'm going to say it right now, unless the jury has this flip of a switch moment where they're saying, wait a minute, we're being too personal. Let's not be that way. Let's make sure that this season is represented by the ultimate survivor, which is Danny. If that happens, great. But I don't see it happening. Most people are not that mature when it comes to $1 million decision. Okay, so that's my decision. That's my opinion. I think that without question, Frannie is going to win out over Danny in that scenario. I also think that Danny made a critical error. If you don't want to say he made an error for saving Frannie, fine. But I will say just giving up his safety was an error. Okay, now he can certainly prove me wrong, and I'm still waiting for that to happen. But I'll say it right now. There were signs in the preview for the next episode which led me to believe that Danny may be in some sort of trouble. Okay, because Carson is making a decision. They left off or ended the preview with saying with Carson saying that It just depends on who I want to betray. So that means there's another war between the same two tribes. Okay, we know that Carolyn, Carson, and Yam Yam are safe if Carson is saying that. I think it's back to that same dilemma between these two tribes. All right, what is it? Soka and Ratu? I forget. Anyway, the point is, I think that he's made a mistake and that he could be in trouble next episode. We'll see. All right, so that's enough of my reaction and how I feel about it. I would like to do a small recap here. All right, so Danny recounts playing idol for Frannie. Was it a smart move? Question remains. Yam Yam takes credit for the fall of Brandon, Josh, and Matt. How do you feel about Yam Yam taking so much credit for these players? And he also noted that, basically anybody who set a vote out for Yam Yam was going home. And, another player who voted for Yam Yam that Yam Yam seemed to be gunning for this entire episode was Kane. And as you saw, Kane went home. So is Yam Yam playing a stronger game than me and you give him credit for? All right. Now, when he gets to final tribal council, he's going to bring it up. He's going to say, hey, these 4 players voted for me and I had a part in voting them out. And who is really going to argue with him? Because they're all sitting on the other side of the game. So there's some validity to what he's saying, despite the fact that I don't quite agree. Kane looks for idol. Danny looks too. That was kind of cool to see an open scramble for the idol. You usually don't see that. You usually see players being more strategic about it. But it was kind of awesome to see that everybody says, screw the rules, screw the political correctness. Let's go out here and find this idol because we know that whoever gets that is going to have power. And man, this was amazing to watch. All right. Anyway, there's an open search for the idol. And I just want to say once again, just in case you forgot, and I know you're tired of me. If you've been watching each one of these sequentially, then you're probably tired of me reminding you. But I got to remind you one more time. I said Heidi was my second player to win, and Carson was my first. And just watching this final 9 group of individuals just made me so excited. Now with final 8, Heidi and Carson are playing great games, and your main man, Rick the Dawn, is definitely picked the right players, man. I'm really, really happy with what I'm seeing. And Heidi finds the idol. Heidi is playing in a top-tier game. She's like a hybrid of like Sandra and I don't know the other person. I don't know. Yeah, I caught myself. Boston, no, not that good. But no, the point is, she is really doing a good job because she has mastered the ability of playing both sides of the game, meaning staying in the driver's seat, but also being in the back seat. It's almost like Heidi is in the back seat with her foot stretched out, pushing down on the gas pedal, and the person that's driving thinks that they're controlling the car when it's really Heidi. That is the gameplay that she's playing, and I really like it. However, it almost cost her this episode. You saw that Heidi will she get 3 votes? She got 3 votes this episode, and I think that her gig might be up. I think people are starting to realize who she is, and I think it's because she's doing a little more talking than she typically does. Another player that I think is doing more talking than they typically do, and it hasn't cost them yet, but I'm thinking that it could eventually, and that's Carolyn. I think Carolyn plays best when everyone thinks she's pretty ditzy. This episode had a lot of her background story, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that she was more in the forefront and kind of talking with people. And I get the social elements, and I understand why she would want to do that. But on the other hand, I think she needs to kind of stay in that bag that she's been playing the entire game. And I think later would be a great time to divulge your history and stuff like that. But that's just me, okay? All right, anyway, Danny says he won't vote for sit out. So this is pretty cool. We get to the immunity challenge, and Jeff definitely throws a wrench in the player's game. He offers rice if 4 players were to sit out. And what are you doing in this situation? Are you taking the rice or are you playing? And I will be honest with you. I think I'm an eater. I like to eat a lot. And if I'm on a island, I haven't ate much. And I'm not a person that is very adventurous with what he eats. Like, I'm not going to eat a snail. And I don't care how hungry I am. I'm not going to eat a snail. I'm not sure I'm going to eat a bamboo leaf. Like, whatever they was cooking, I'm not eating that stuff. So I'm probably going to sit out, and I'm probably going home this episode. But nevertheless, are you sitting out? Danny says that he gives scouts honors if, he will not vote for the people that sit out, and immediately, like I'm talking about light seconds, like layers of fast. The minute he said that, I said, there's no way that Danny is not going to vote for the person or people that's sitting out. He is not that kind of player. He has already made it very clear that he doesn't play a honorable survivor game. And I'm not saying that's a negative or bad thing. I'm just saying that is not the game that Danny plays. It just isn't. All right. So when he says that, I immediately know that he's definitely voting he's going to vote for whoever who is advantageous for himself or his game. Anyway, Heidi, Lauren, Carson, and Kane sit out. And Kane, wow, how terrible was that? He sits out. He pretty much puts his trust in the group, and he ultimately gets voted out. And it was kind of cool to see as he's walking towards Jeff to get his his fire snuffed out. He said, "Enjoy the rice, you B words." I thought that was hilarious because it's like he sacrificed his game. But that just goes to show you take your mind off the prize for just a second. That's not just Survivor. That's life in general. If you take your eyes off the prize for just a second, that 1 second can cost you. All right. Anyway, Frannie battles and beats Danny for the immunity. How amazing was Frannie this episode? I'm not sure if you're a fan of Frannie. I'm not really. Ultimately, you probably can't tell, but I'm not the biggest fan of Frannie. But I will say this, credit where credit is due. I was incredibly impressed with what Frannie was able to pull off against Danny. Shout out to Frannie. Anyway, who would you vote for? I kind of asked that question. Heidi targets Kane, and this was a very surprising moment in this episode because they get back to the island, and everyone's trying to figure it out. Everybody's kind of kumbaya on it. But, Heidi is the very first player to say, I think we should vote Kane. She's the first one. And once she says it, you can see the light bulb spark in every player's mind. They're like, wait, Kane is on the island. I feel like no matter who Heidi would have said, that player would have went home. You want to know why? Because Heidi has generated a great level of trust in her word. She's an honorable player. She doesn't double cross. She doesn't double speak. She doesn't say one thing and then do another. And I think because of that, she's generated a large amount of currency in the way that she plays. So she could have said Danny, and Danny would have went home. But because Heidi said Kane, I think the other players immediately, subconsciously wanted to take credit for that play and say, hey, get Kane. So next thing you know, Kane's name is being spread around the camp. But it all started from the spark that Heidi lit. All right, I love that type of gameplay. Awesome job. Anyway, why isn't anyone targeting Tika is a piece of note that I wrote down. Tika is playing the middle, and we heard a lot of talk this time. I said this already. If you watch my other reaction, you already know I said this. I said, why wouldn't Soka and Ratu eliminate the middle players? Because they're in the middle, and they have no, like, the middle players, Tika, they're depending on Ratu and Soka battling each other. So what Tika is doing, they're playing an amazing game. Can I just put that out there? They're playing an amazing game because what they're doing is they're saying, hey, who do we want to go with this week? Who's the stronger team to ally with? And they pick their side, and whoever they pick, the other side goes home. And I'm thinking to myself, why wouldn't Soka and Ratu say, let's get rid of Tika because they have no branch to stand on if they are not depending on us? I don't know why they wouldn't do that, and I don't understand why that hasn't happened yet. Anyway, the idea is to split the vote between Danny and Heidi. I thought that was crazy. I was like, no way that Heidi's going home. I thought Danny was definitely going to bite the dust this episode. I'm not sure how things swung, but I think it all goes back to what Heidi said. It was no question in my mind. Danny's going home because Danny doesn't have an idol. And that's what sparked this entire idea. I'm like, wait, did Danny screw himself by saving Frannie and not saving his idol instead? All right, because I understand tribe alliances, but when it's all said and done, we are playing Survivor with a capital S. We're past that team Survivor. We're past that. So for me, it was a mistake for that reason and that reason only. But I will say this was one of the most intense tribal councils, and it's mainly because there were so many ideas floating around that when we got to tribal council, it was like, what plan sticks? I mean, you had a plan for getting Heidi out. You had a plan for getting Danny out. You had a plan for getting Jamie out. You had a plan for getting Kane out. And it's like, which of these 4 pathways are these players going to go? Because you got 9 players and 4 different pathways. That's chaos on paper. But seeing it play out in live form was even more chaotic. Jamie gives her idol to Kane, so a lot of craziness ensues. But anyway, ultimately, Kane bites the dust, and I believe he took Jamie's idol home. And I will say, I think Jamie's idol was fake. Please correct me on that. I believe that it was. All right. But nevertheless, thank you for checking this recap out. Check out Outlast. And if you do, make sure you let me know. I want to see if I'm the only person who was able to connect Outlast with the show of Survivor and say, this is really survival at its finest. So I want to see if you feel the same way if you check it out. Nevertheless, thank you so much for watching. It's your man, Rick Dawn. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you next week. Peace.